You're listening to Season 4, Episode 5 of the Indie Artist Tribe podcast with me, your host, Angela Matamocha. Welcome! Thank you so much for joining me. Today's guest is an independent feature film producer. He is an expert in the business of film funding. He is passionate about educating new filmmakers. He is also a former board member of the New Filmmakers Los Angeles and currently serves as the chair of the Members Events Committee for the Producers Guild of America. And he is the owner of one of the kindest and most generous souls I know in the biz. Good people, I bring to you Franco Sama. Hi, Franco.
Hi, Angela. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for coming along. It is so great to see you.
Likewise, it's been too long, so even if it's the way we have to see each other, I'm all in. That's great.
I know. And you know, it's funny, just as I was saying that, Sama, what kind of a name is Sama?
It's actually Italian. My grandparents were from Calabria, Italy, on both sides.
Oh, wow.
In Calabria, Sama is actually a fairly common name.
Really? So it's not short. That is the full name, Sama.
That is the name, yeah, Sama. And that's why I named my company Samako.
Samako. So it's Samako.
Yeah, Samako.
Samako Films. Franco Sama. It's such a lovely name, Franco Sama.
Do you remember Dynasty, the television show?
I kind of do. I was really young, but I know of it.
Yeah, well, I was there.
What?
Well, I mean, I watched the show when it was, growing up, and what I loved about what I remember is that the name was Colby, the surname, and they called their company Colby Co. And so when I was younger, I thought, someday when I grow up, if I ever have a company, I'm going to call it Samako.
That's where that comes from. I had no idea.
I finally got to our place, and I did what I said I was going to do when I was a kid, and I named it Samako. And it's been that way for almost 20 years.
Samako. So Samako Films is your production company. And I got to ask you, what is it that you love most about being a producer?
Well, I think the thing I love the most is really putting it all together. I learned over the years how to identify my strengths, right? And I now know what those are, but I also know what my weaknesses are, and I don't purport myself to be able to do everything. And so one of the things that I'm so grateful about is that over the years, I've been able to assemble a nice team, a good team of people, and they all have their own specialty, right? They're all experts in their own fields. And then I get to pull all those pieces in together to put together this basically, it's almost like putting a puzzle together and taking all of the pieces from all of those different elements, using the expertise that they're lending to put together under the project. And then when it's all put together as a puzzle, we're going to go sell the puzzle.
I like looking at it like that. That's really cool. And it makes sense because it is a puzzle. The more I'm learning about this too, the more I'm realizing. For those listening, during the pandemic, I started my work with Franco in getting my second feature film off the ground. So that's one of the things I really want to talk to you guys about today and share with you is this knowledge. What if you do have an idea for a project or you do have a script and you have no idea where to start? As I said in the very beginning, Franco is an expert at educating folks on how to get their films off the ground. So what is, for an independent writer, director, first-time producer, what's the first step? If they've got a script, what's the first thing they do?
Well, that actually is the first step, right? To make sure that they have a script, because some people come to me prematurely because they have an idea, but it's not a script yet. Now, on this recent film that I just signed on to, it was a book, right? We hired a WGA screenwriter to adapt the book into a screenplay. because they came to us with a great, amazing story, but there's no script.
Right.
And for me, in terms of what I do, I can't do anything without that script. So like in your case, you had a script and your script was already developed to the point where, we didn't need to spend a whole lot of time doing anything with it. It was already ready to go. And that's not always the case. And that's okay. If it's not the case, part of what we do during that phase is help people get their script to where it needs to go. And that changes, of course, as you know, over time, and as other people come in and you start sending it out, and actors read it and agents read it, and you get all notes from everywhere. And then, you have to be able to be flexible enough to be able to make those adjustments, but without losing your soul, right? Without losing the story that you're trying to tell. And that's what we do. We help protect that story. But so anything that we bring to it is only there to help make it better, right? I always tell people when they bring me they pitch me, right? I get pitched all the time. And usually, probably 9 times out of 10, what happens is what they just proposed is pitchable, but it's not fundable.
It's pitchable, but it's not fundable.
So
meaning
the story itself is pitchable. You can pitch the story and everybody can get the idea. But when it comes to investors,
yep,
they're not looking for those things. I have probably the last 2 films I've done, 2 of them, the last 3, the investors never even read the script.
Right.
They didn't even really know what it was about. And so I think that's one of the misnomers in this business when it comes to the financing. Remember, I'm strictly on the financing side. So what I'm looking at it from the investor's perspective.
Yes.
And I think that's why I do the education.
Can I pause you right there?
Yeah.
Very interesting what you just said. So out of these last 3 projects, 2 of the investors didn't even read it. Why do they invest without reading, or why did they invest?
That's a wonderful question. Because they're investors and they want to make money, and so the only thing they care about is the opportunity to get a return on that investment, right? Just like anything else. If and as you know, the industry standard for a return on investment is 20%. So that means if somebody's going to give me $1 million to make a movie, I got to make sure they get back $1 million too, right? That's the break even, that they got their money back, which we call the principal, and then they get their what we call ROI, or return on investment. So they get $1 million too back, and then they're happy, right? They got their money and they didn't lose anything, and they got 20%, which is great. And that's what they're looking for. And so my job as a collective, I'm talking about me and the team, is to make that project investable, right? And by doing that, like just today, I had somebody call me and he said to me, and this is a classic, this happens almost all the time. He said, "Can you help me, blah, blah, blah." And I said, "Well, what's your budget?" And he said, "It's $5 million."
Oh,
I said, "Okay." I said, can you email that to me? I would like to see your budget. He said, "Well, I don't have one."
Oh,
I said, "You don't have a budget?" He said, "No, I don't have one." I said, "Well, then where's this $5 million come?" He says, "Well, I figure between," and I'm like, no. And this is a friend of mine, by the way, and he's out there. And the reason he called me is because he wanted to make an offer to an actor, right? Which, number one, we're in a strike, so you can't do that anyway. And number 2, you can't make an offer without having money in the bank to back that offer. And number 3, you don't even have a budget.
or a schedule.
Or a schedule. Or
right?
anything. You don't have anything. And then beyond that, as you know from our experience together, you need sales projections. So you have to figure out, because an investor's that's what the investor wants to see. They don't care about the story. They want to see what are the numbers.
What are the numbers?
How much is it going to cost, and how much am I going to get back, and when am I going to get it? That's what they're looking for.
Okay. So I'm a new filmmaker. This is for our listeners again. I have the script. I love this script. Franco, will you help me make this movie? I love this script. What is the first thing you're going to do with this script, or have that writer do with this script?
Well, the first thing we would do if they come on board uh, with our company is we would do a deep dive script analysis. And if you recall, our good friend Lorraine,
Yes.
it was a coincidence that I
Yes.
couldn't believe you knew each other. She's been
Such a
with me
small
8
town.
years. Lorraine or somebody like Lorraine will take
Yeah.
a deep dive and really help kind of get into the meat. And I that's what I was saying to you earlier. I don't have that skill set. I don't know
Right.
anything about that. I don't even
Right.
get involved. In fact, if you remember, a lot of times you guys were just talking without me because
Yes.
I'm just clueless about that stuff.
Right.
But she's an expert, so that's why I rely on her. And then the next thing we're going to do is go get a budget, like I was saying with this guy, and a schedule and the whole thing. And again, I have people for that because I don't know how to do that. Now I'm really good. I always tell people I can tell everything I need to know about you as a filmmaker by looking at your budget. So that's what kind of insight I have into the budget. The difference is I can't create. I'm not the guy to make your budget. We have experts that do that.
You know, it was such a wonderful thing for me to work with you because at the end of our term, I had a budget, I had a schedule, and it was really great because when I was speaking with other producers, other production companies, they'd say, "So what's the budget?" And I would tell them, "Let me see your budget. I've got it right here." And honestly, I think that really helped to open doors and help people to, want to have a conversation with me because they see that I had my numbers. I knew my numbers, right?
And otherwise, they won't take you seriously
No,
because
they will not.
because they know you haven't done the work yet,
Yep.
and they don't want to do it. They don't want to take that on.
Yeah.
It's your movie, so they're expecting you to know these things. So it's a combination of educating people about stuff like this, and just to carry this through to the other side, as you recall, we did the casting,
Yep.
right? And when I say casting, we didn't actually cast the movie, but we looked at actors and actresses that would be the most appropriate
With the casting director.
with the casting director. And then we went to the sales agent, who I think was Scott. Was it? Do you remember who we went to?
Yes. Yes.
Scott. It was probably Scott because I've been with Scott.
No, Hildebrandt.
Who?
Hildebrandt? Mark?
Mark was the one who did the budget.
Oh, he did the budget. Okay. Okay.
But anyway, so what we do, and this is my favorite part of the process that you had asked me earlier, is we had you, we had the basically writer director, right? And you.
Yes. That was,
And then we had the casting director
yes.
who had already given us the first round of lists of ideas.
Yes.
And then we had me, of course, on that Zoom. And then we had the sales guy who's responsible for figuring out what the value is of your movie in the world, around the world, internationally and domestically. And we all crunch our heads together. I call it the powwow. And we all crunch our heads together and we come up with a comprehensive list of at least 5 names for each actor that will potentially sell this movie. And then Scott goes and delivers those projections. And that's the kind of stuff when you go to your pitch deck. I got a pitch deck not too long ago, and he called it the investor deck. And I am not exaggerating when I say this. This is a true story. There were 6 pages of a synopsis. And there wasn't a single element in that pitch deck that had anything even remotely to do with financing or getting your money back or tax incentives or any of the things that investors want to know about tax incentives. Are you kidding me? In New York, now they just put a new tax credit in place.
Oh, wow. What's the percent?
It used to be 30% below the line only. Now it's 30% above and below the line, which
what's the minimum spend?
I think it's like 300,000 or something.
Oh, okay.
It gets better. If we're shooting our next couple of movies in Buffalo.
Oh, wonderful.
The reason, there's a lot of reasons around it, but the financial reason is because we get what we call the Buffalo bump. You get an extra 10% for shooting outside of New York City.
Oh, wow.
And so we're talking about 40%. That means for every $1 million we spend in Buffalo, we're going to get 400,000 of that back. And that money goes straight into the investor's pocket as a recoupment, right? That's our first payment before we even make the movie. So basically what I'm doing is I'm mitigating or minimizing the risk. So you give me $1 million, your only exposure on the equity of risk is 600,000 because I'm going to cover the 400,000 with collateral. I'm going to collateralize it by assigning the state funds that we're going to receive over to you as the investor. That's how I structure my deals.
Right.
And people need to understand how that works. If you're going to make a movie and you don't understand this stuff, you're going to be in trouble. It's going to take you 10 years. Unless you partner with somebody who does it all for you. But I'm just saying, I'm a believer in doing it yourself, owning your property, keeping your creative control, owning the piece of the movie, the financial part, so that if it does really well, you're the one who profits from it, instead of signing it over to some company who's going to write you a check for some measly 50 grand or something, and then they're going to go make the millions.
All right. This is great. Okay. So I'm a first time, producer, director, writer, what have you. I, have my script covered. I get coverage on my script. I get a casting director to give me some ideas of names that work in the marketplace. Once I have that, I then need a salesperson to give me projections.
Yeah. And we're not finished. Because
No.
then you need an attorney, because before you go out to investors, you have to have a PPM, private placement memorandum, and you have to have a subscription agreement, because that's the means by which an investor can legally invest in a movie.
What's a subscription agreement?
A subscription agreement is part of the PPM. That is, they're literally subscribing to your project. I'm going to put in $500,000, and it's almost like an application, because if they're accredited investors, which they should be, you're going to avoid any conflict potential with the Securities and Exchange Commission, the SEC. So in order to do everything on the up and up and legally, you want to bring somebody in who has that skill set, right? And who can provide those kinds of documents and create them for us, so that we can just go out and raise the money and not have to worry about getting in trouble because we're doing it wrong. Outside of crowdfunding, that's really the only way anybody should do it. Because with crowdfunding, of course, there's no equity stake. They're getting perks instead of, I'm not a big fan of that, but don't get me started on that. But anyway, I'd rather see people spend the energy and the time trying to find actual investors. So anyway, that's the last sort of step. And then you put your pitch deck together, and now you have all of this in your pitch deck, right? You have everything in the pitch deck.
So now you're ready to approach investors. They want to see a budget. They want to know who the talent might be. They want to know.
And the director.
I was going to say that. Aren't they going to want to know who the producer is, who the talent is?
Well, the producer, yes and no, because we're going to hire those people later with their money, right? If I'm on the project, then I'm not the producer, but I'm a producer, right? Because I'm still going to go hire all those other people. Because that's, I'm not on set or doing any of that.
Right.
We're going to hire those people. But it's my credentials that are going to get me the funding, right? And then we're going to hire those people. So, and what was the other part of the question you said?
I'm just listening. Like what?
No. I lost my train of thought for a second. But what
the package is ready for investors.
The package is ready to go. Now you're investable, right? Now you can go knocking on those doors, and we do that with you. So that's why I say you can go out and try to find all those people on your own.
Yeah.
Or you can just call me, and I already have them, right? The team is already in place. And then say all the way down to the lawyer. And then the attorney and myself stay all the way to the end, right? Because those other people provided a service. They gave us the information we needed, and now we're done with them. That doesn't mean we can't hire them later if they're interested in the movie later when we get funding, right? But for the most part, our goal is to raise the funds and bring in that first round of equity, which is the most important, as you know, because that's what allows us. So, for example, if I have a movie that's $2 million and we start off with a half a million, with that $500,000, even though I don't have the whole 2 million, I can legitimately go and hire, not hire, but make an offer to a director or to an actor, because I get the money in the bank to prove that I can back the offer that I'm making. And that's what most people do wrong, right? Is they're out there making offers and
without any money,
and they're not being taken seriously. And so
right.
they get dropped to the end of the pile. One of the things, I know what I was going to say. I remember it. It is about directors. So, you know, it is harder to be
a new director.
It is harder because, you know, and certainly if you have other stuff that you've directed, even if it's short films or whatever, even features. I've had people do a feature for $100,000.
Yeah.
But they have a showpiece.
Yes.
So you can have that. But if you don't have that, it makes it a bigger battle. But in the world of like 3 to 5 million ish, it helps to have a name director. I'll give you an example. I have a comedy right now. We were trying to find a director, and it's hard to find a director right now because of the strike and all the craziness. But we have an investor. She just hasn't put the money in yet. And what her thing was, you get me a director, and I'll give you the money. Catch 22. So what I did is I called my good friend Michael, who directed my Gary Oldman movie, which was a comedy.
Oh, perfect.
And tomorrow, I think it's tomorrow, I'm having a second Zoom with him and the writer. The writer's just the writer. He doesn't want to direct or anything, right? So I got the writer and Michael and me. And if we close that deal and Michael becomes attached as the director, now I can go back to our investor and say, there you go. This is somebody who's done 3 films in the comedy genre, all of which have been successful. And one of them was with me, with Gary Oldman.
Perfect.
So
perfect.
That's the strategy. I'm only using these as examples because they're real. This is real time. This is stuff I'm like doing right now this week. And I think it's helpful. That's why I like doing these things privately and face to face, because next week it might be a different project with a different story, you know?
Well, yeah. Well, that's also the value of, working with you is you are in the mix right now. You're not, a producer that produced something 10 years ago and now, take my course or what have you.
Yeah. Well, you know what? Thank you for saying that, because I've always felt that because internally, I always say I want to be relevant, right? I don't want to be the guy that used to make movies that teaches. I want to be the guy that is making movies and loves to teach.
Yes. Right? And you are that guy.
I am that guy. I've become that guy. And that makes me happy because I get the best of both worlds. And I'm going to be honest with you. There's a little bit of a selfish ulterior motive there. And that is that by taking these projects like yours and many others and having the opportunity to work on them from the ground up,
right?
I'm literally cultivating my future.
Very true.
Right? The 3 movies I told you that came out this year, 2023, all fit into that category.
Tell us, because this was before we started recording. What's the one that's coming out in theaters next month?
Well, I got Take the Night is the first movie, which already came out in theaters. It was a limited theatrical release at the beginning of 2023. That came out. Awesome. The second one is called Suka, which is the one we shot in Australia.
That's right.
And it's actually a TV movie.
A television movie. Got it. That
was my first TV credit ever.
Oh, wow. Congrats.
I was excited about that. We're selling it internationally still as a standalone film, right? We're doing both.
Interesting.
Yeah. So I was the one who brought in the domestic distribution, which is North America, which is US and Canada.
Yeah.
And then Australia, of course, bought it, because it's Australia. And it's a really, really great film. I'll send you the trailer.
Okay.
And then the third one is the one you're talking about. It's called The Shift. And I was a consulting producer on that. And it comes out in December 1st. And that stars Neil McDonough. And that film is like a faith-based film.
Okay, great, great.
Yeah,
Faith-based, that's a very hot
it is.
genre, right?
Yeah, genre-wise right now, faith-based is popping. It's a good time for it. Thrillers are always great.
Always.
Um, anything action-y is great. You know, it's hard to make a low-budget action movie and make it look good. So we don't really focus too much on action, but sci-fi is still pretty strong. I have a movie called Humanoids.
That's a nice
Yeah,
sci-fi title.
Humanoids will be hopefully next year. It got slowed down because of the strikes, but you know, we're going to pick that back up again when the strike ends. So yeah,
Dramas seem like to be the most trickiest to make. Yeah,
straight drama and straight comedy are the hardest to
right.
sell.
To
They're the
sell.
hardest to sell.
Okay.
Yeah, they just are. Yeah, that's just the way it is.
I wanted to ask you, you were talking about, these tax credits in Buffalo, and that's one of the reasons you're shooting there. Is LA a tough place to shoot for independent filmmakers?
Unfortunately, yes.
Yeah.
In fact, I just had a call today with my Humanoids filmmaker guy,
Okay.
and he is doing us because the Humanoids got pushed aside
Yeah.
because right. Humanoids is like $6 million, right?
Okay.
So he decided smartly that he was going to make a $300,000 movie first. And part of the reason is, and this is for your first-time directors out there, is that we were having a hard time getting him financed because he was a first-time director.
Ah, yeah.
So he said to me, what if I make a $300,000 movie and I direct it and I get distribution, and then they can't call me a first-time director anymore? And I agreed with him and I support him on that project, right?
Yeah.
So he just got 2 days ago approved for the interim agreement, the SAG interim agreement.
Oh, perfect.
Which people have been having a hard time getting approved for. He got approved.
Wow.
So that's what our call was about today. And I said to him, did you try to qualify for the California tax credit? And he said,
I think minimum spend is like 1.5.
We couldn't do it. They wouldn't do it. And beside that, even though he didn't qualify, they were out of money because it's cyclical and they're out of money. So California just isn't the place. California, the plus side of California is a lot of the name actors live here.
The talent.
Yeah. So but even with the Gary Oldman thing, we shot that thing in Utah.
Right.
And probably the last place he wanted to do is get in go to Utah. 9 days. But he did it. Kristen Slater was in that movie too. And I only say that because it was cold. It was winter, it was like,
oh my God.
There was no time to be in Utah. But unless he skis, maybe he had a great time on the slopes. I don't know. But anyway, so yeah, tax credits are tricky. One of the things that we do in this process, especially when we get closer and we have some money in the account, when we're getting there, because it's gradual. It's very rare that you get one big investment from one person. It's very rare. So as we start to grow the money, we start getting closer to where are we actually going to shoot this thing now. Everything else has been hypothetical.
Right. But
where are we going to go that's going to fit? Like, for example, in Buffalo, they just built a brand new soundstage. It's gorgeous.
Oh, wow.
So, and the architecture there fits this particular film that we're gonna do there. So, and then you have the tax credit on top of it. So there's a lot of reasons to go there. It's not just because of the money. But we do an analysis of that. We figure it out, at the beginning, we're just kind of hypothetical. Well, we could shoot it in here or here. These are the two places. Canada is always a possibility.
Yeah, I remember on my deck, you had me change that because I remember I had locations and you told me to put proposed locations because we don't know where we're going to shoot yet or what tax credits might be available. Who knows where.
And they change, like I said.
Yeah.
This tax credit, I can't remember when I was in New York. I was in New York recently for all of this. And it was literally, I had already bought my plane tickets before we got the notice that the tax credit changed. So we were going there anyway, just to scout. And then once the announcement came out about the tax credit, it was unbelievable. I mean, so we ended up the timing was perfect because we were going anyway. And we had lunch with the mayor and the two heads of the film commission. They'd wined us and dined us. In fact, if you remind me, I'll send you a picture. We were driving down the street, because this was for Anthony's film. We were driving down the street, and the location manager, we were in his truck, his SUV, and we got to a stop sign, and he said, look up. And there was this giant digital billboard, and it said, welcome to Buffalo, Franco and Anthony.
Oh my God, what?
With a film reel on it.
How did you not take a picture of this and put it all over the internet?
I didn't do that, but I did put it up on Facebook, of course, when it happened, you know.
Oh my
And
God.
we got quite a thrill out of it. And I mean, they just were so incredible. They opened their arms to us. We were there for a couple of weeks, and we met with everybody. We met with casting people. We met with everybody. I mean, it was just amazing. And you think Buffalo, you wouldn't think, you know, it's like this mecca of film, but it's very close to New York City.
Yeah.
So we can pull from there and a couple
Yeah, for sure.
You know, other places, even Massachusetts, relatively close. So there's a lot going on there. The weather is an issue, of course.
Of course.
In terms of how much time of the year you're able to shoot there. But when it comes to interiors, doesn't matter, right? We're going to doesn't matter. So yeah, so all of that's important. This is what I tell people. It's like, you really have to learn the stuff. You have to know.
You do.
Stuff, because if you don't, you're just going to be going uphill all the time, and you're never going to get anywhere.
That's such an important point, because as creatives, I know me for one, that's the last thing I want to do is learn about tax credits and any of this. But the more I know, the more empowered I am, and I understand the decisions that are being made, and I understand what goes into a project the next time I sit down to write my next screenplay. It's like, oh, wait a minute. Maybe I shouldn't put like a frozen lake right here, you know, unless I know I can go shoot in, you know, I don't know, Minnesota or what have you.
That's
you know?
a very, very, very good point. Is that it literally helps you write your next movie, because you have all of this wealth of information now that's going to steer you in a very different, instead of just kind of like just going out there and just writing, you know, out of your heart, which you should be doing anyway. You can put a little bit more emphasis on certain things and take it away from others because you have that knowledge. But look, this is what I tell people. At the end of the day, you're competing with people who do know this stuff. That's who you're competing with. And let me tell you something. If I'm sitting in front of an investor and I got two projects and one of them has all of the stuff and the other one doesn't, they're only going to look at the one that has the stuff. You know, they're not even going to bother with the other.
All right. So I want to reel it back in real quick and talk about sort of working in reverse, right? Because we know at the end of the day, this project has to have distribution. Is there anything that we do in the development stage with distribution in mind?
In mind, yes. There's two schools of thought on this.
Yeah.
To development. In sort of I kind of call it the old days, but when I say that, I mean like 5 years ago, because everything's changed so much, especially in the distribution world, right? With streaming and everything else, it's just like it's unrecognizable from when I started, right?
Not bad.
And it's not a bad thing. It's just different. You have to adapt to that, right? But back in the day, it was traditional to go to a distributor, and I've done it many times myself, before which I still do, as you know, to get the sales projections.
Yes.
But I don't sign a deal with them. I'm not going to sign a deal with them. I'm just going to borrow their expertise to get the money, and then we'll figure out who's going to distribute the movie. But at the end of the day, you have to consider distribution all the way through the process from the very beginning. And who's your market audience? Who's your target audience? You have to know that. You can't just write and then not know where it's going to go or who's going to be interested in seeing it. And you and I had that very specifically because of your movie is very specific. It's very genre specific, right? But it's a whole world of access that isn't being served. And to me, that's a giant plus, right? So the two schools of thought are, if I go work with a distributor now and they like my project, at that point, it's just the script and the package that we're going to put together. Then they're going to potentially give me one of two things. Either what we call the minimum guarantee, which I'll explain in a minute, or a pre-sale. So a pre-sale means they're actually going to take the film, the premise, and the data that we have in our deck, and they're going to pick up their phone and call their contacts in places like Germany and France and the UK, and they're going to pitch it and try to sell the rights to the movie in that territory for a certain amount of money, and they're going to give us a price, whether it's 200,000, 500,000, or whatever it is, right? If I can write a pre-sale agreement based on my data, I'll get a contract from that distributor, from that outlet in Germany, worth $300,000. And then I can take that $300,000 contract and turn it into cash.
Got it.
All right. So that's pre-sale. The other thing is called a minimum guarantee, or an MG. Minimum guarantee is they run the numbers and they say, based on these numbers, we'll give you a minimum guarantee of $350,000. I can take that $350,000 piece of paper minimum guarantee and I can turn that into money.
By going to a bank, by going to...
Got a whole bunch of people I can go to. I got banks, I have investors, I got what we call debt facilities, I got all of it. And then I'm going to do the same thing with your tax credit. So if your tax credit is 40%, now I'm going to take your tax credit and I'm going to add it to your minimum guarantee, and I'm going to package them together, and I'm going to get you it's a loan. You're borrowing the money, right? But that money is available to you as part of the budget to make the movie with. Okay, so that's the first school of thought. The problem with that, and I've done it many times, and again, I'll use the Gary Oldman movie as an example, is that once you sign that contract with them, you're signing 5, 7, 10, I've heard as high as 15 years you're committed to that distributor for your film, right? So let's say it's 10 years.
Before it's even made.
Yeah, before it's even made.
Oh my gosh.
In exchange for this measly $200,000 or $300,000 commitment, which they're not even giving you the money. We have to go get the money, and then we got to pay interest on it, right? Because it's a loan. So back in the old days, they actually did give you the money.
Wow.
If they gave you a $300,000 minimum guarantee, they gave you $300,000. Those days are long gone, right? Anyway, the disadvantage there is that now you're locked in, which means if you go make an amazing movie, which everyone's expecting, when it comes time to go to Sundance or Tribeca, you can still submit and show your film and compete. But what are you competing for? The whole purpose of there is to get a good distribution deal. And you already signed this thing a year and a half ago. And you still got 9 years left on your contract. And you can't compete. There's no competition anymore. And you're stuck. You're literally stuck. So what was interesting about the movie was called Guns, Girls, and Gambling, by the way. That was the Gary Oldman and Christian Slater.
Yes.
That movie, at the time, they had the option to do that, to sign one of those things to get the money. But they were smart enough to decide not to do that and to go outside and get the funds that they needed, so that, because they believed they were going to have a really great movie, which I believe it is. And then what happened ultimately was that by making that decision, Universal ended up picking up the film, right? Universal Home Video picked up the distribution on that movie. That wouldn't have been an option had they signed that agreement, which was before I ever even met them. They had the agreement on the desk, but they didn't sign it. And so my philosophy is wait, figure out how to raise the money without the distributors. Don't tie yourself down to them. Make the best movie that you know how to make, and then go out and compete in the marketplace. That's what I do now. That's not what I used to do, but that's what I do now.
And I can only imagine that makes more sense to do now, because with all these streamers and different online platforms, I can only imagine that these minimum guarantees, I mean, do they even exist in territories anymore?
They do, but they're so small. They're tiny.
Right?
We're talking 25 grand, 50 grand, 100 grand. It's not worth it.
Wow.
You know, and like I said, in terms of the landscape being different, you know, when I first started, the always the goal was to get into theaters. It was always getting into
Not
theaters.
anymore.
My first movie that went into theaters was called Tooth and Nail with Michael Madsen and Vinnie Jones, and it went into 350 theaters in the United States. It was unbelievable, and this was like I was just starting out, right? That was the way. That was the ideal. That was the dream.
Yeah.
Now, it just isn't. Now, Netflix is the dream.
Netflix is the dream, and you don't make money with Netflix.
Well, you can.
You
can.
How?
Well, I mean, it depends. I mean, if you have good representation for sales, then you can carve out a pretty good deal. But you know, and it depends. You know, you don't necessarily want to go exclusive, because then it eliminates other possibilities. But you know, really where the money is, in my view, today, and this is the reason why having some kind of a recognizable name in the movie is so important, is in the international marketplace. Domestically, you're right. It's going to be kind of a wash, you know. If I do a movie for 3 million and I can make half of that in the US, I'm happy, because I'm going to pick up the rest by selling off territories in the world, by having a reputable, keyword, sales agent represent my film that is going to go to Cannes and Germany and Berlin and all of the festivals all year round, selling my film, selling the rights to my film, AFM, Sundance, all of it. So the idea is to sign with a good company that, you know, now it's okay because the movie's already finished.
Right.
And so now there's no more guessing. There's no more speculation, right? I don't know if you remember, but in the sales projections, we have 3 columns.
Yes.
It's
the low end, the middle, and the high. Yeah.
Well, the reason for that is because it's speculative, and they don't know what you're. You can say, I'm going to have Brad Pitt, you know, in my movie, and it's going to be a thriller, and the directing is going to be incredible, and it's going to be a super powerhouse film, and they go, sure, here are your numbers based on your pitch, and then Brad's not in your movie. The lighting is terrible. You know what I mean? And all of these things go wrong, right? And they're like, no, I'm not going to pay you that, because that's not what we agreed to. And so I'm not going to give you the middle number or the high number. You're lucky you're getting the low number, and it's only because we signed a contract. So that's the reason why there's such a variance in low, middle, and high, because we don't know, which proves my point, right? Is that if you just wait, you still need the projections, because you have to entice the investor.
Yeah.
But now you make the movie like we did, and then you go out and compete, and you sell it to either the highest bidder or just the best overall deal. Sometimes the highest bidder isn't always the best deal, right? So that's something that we come in and help. You know, I tell filmmakers all the time, don't sign anything.
Right.
Until at least run it by me. Let me take my eyes on it. Let me put my eyes once, you know, because I've been doing this for so long. I know what all those little tricks are underneath in the small print that most people won't see. And that's where you get in trouble.
Gosh, I mean, this industry is constantly changing. And I just wonder, after all these strikes have settled, do you think it's going to make things more difficult for the independent producer, right? Now that, you know, the writers have certain agreements, SAG, hopefully with their actors will have certain agreements in place. So I wonder what that's going to look like for, you know.
I don't know that it's going to make it any more difficult. It's definitely going to make it more expensive.
Right.
Like,
well, that's kind of.
I'll give an example. I told you I'm hiring a writer for this project, right?
Yes.
So the DGA at the time when we started the negotiation the DGA minimum for what we were asking him to do was $86,000.
WGA or DGA?
Sorry,
Got you.
The WGA minimum was $86,000 when we started the negotiations. They're now 106,000.
106,000.
The exact same thing that we're doing.
Right.
So now what we've been able to do is agree to defer that into the budget.
I see.
The difference, right? So that we could still get the movie written. So that difference will get deferred into the budget, and he'll get paid when we all get paid, when we have the money to pay.
Franco,
That's one example.
For the screenwriters that are listening and, are trying to get their foot in the door, you just hired this writer. How did you find this writer out of all the writers in Hollywood?
Well, that's a because I've been doing this for 26 years, I already know these people. I mean, he was my go-to guy. The minute I read the synopsis, I knew it was him. And part of the reason is because it's a sports movie. And he is a sports guy.
Right.
And he's a prolific writer, and he's also an award-winning writer. So I already knew, the minute I read the thing, I knew exactly who I was going to call. And I did right away. Because as you know, most of the projects that come to me, you're the writer.
Yes.
The writer's already part of the deal. You know what I mean?
Would you encourage or recommend writers to produce their own work if they're, trying to bust in Hollywood, trying to get in? They have all these scripts, but they're not produced writers yet.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. You got to. These days, you have to. You have to. And that's what I'm saying. You have to figure it out. You can no longer rely on other people to do this for you. It's not going to happen because everybody's doing their own thing. Nobody's got time to do it for you. Nobody's got the wherewithal to do it for you because they're doing theirs, including me.
Right.
I had somebody just say to me the other day, I have a movie that we're putting up. It's called Vodun. I'm very excited about it. And I hope to make it next year. I don't know. Who knows, right? I'm just like everybody else. But I follow my own rules, right? And I had somebody that wanted to bring me on for their film. And he said to me, well, why can't you just raise me all the money? Right? And I said, well, I'll give you two reasons. Number one, it's not my movie. It's your movie, right? So I'm going to help you.
Right.
But I'm not going to do it for you. Why would I do that? Considering, point two, if somebody was going to write me a check today for $500,000, you think I'd give it to some stranger who's just knocking on my door? Or would I put it into Vodun, my own movie, and elevate my own platform, right?
Of course.
So that's why my point to you is the answer to the question is everybody's doing their own thing.
Yeah. Right?
So you need to be doing your own thing. I don't mean you, because I know you already are. I'm talking to your listeners. Be your own producer. Learn it. Figure it out. Take my course, for God's sakes. The course will teach you at least the basics.
Yeah. And
you can go off and figure it out. And I also tell people, if possible, partner with somebody. My first company was called Filmar Productions, F-Y-L-M-A-R. Filmar Productions. My mother's name was Phyllis, and my mother's name was Mary. So we did the Miramax thing, and we put
them together.
Yeah, we turned the PH into an F for Filmar. And I think we did about 6, 7, 8 movies together under that name. And, talk about a learning experience. I mean, we had no idea what we were doing.
Wow.
Literally had no idea what we were doing. But we figured it out. We went out there and we taught ourselves and we learned. And what we did, so first of all, we partnered with each other. And so we both had our own skill sets. And his was the gift of going out there and throwing the fishing rod and reeling in an investor. He was also half my age, so he had that youth, right? And my gift was closing the guy. You go get him, bring him in the office, and then I'll close him and we'll get the money and we'll make the movie. And so we found, it was amazing. We found that. So I was lucky, that happened. But that's why I say, now I'm a solo act and I prefer it that way.
Right.
I want to be my own. I'm 66 years old. I don't need partner. you know,
Right, right.
set in my ways. But we both ended up having successful careers. And because we started together as a team. So especially for the younger people, it's better to find somebody who you don't share the skill set with. You know, if you're both writers and both creators, it's a lot harder because there's nobody representing the business side. But if you find somebody like he was my partner or me, you know, he was more on the creative side, but he was really, really quick learner when it came to the business. And I had come from an entire lifetime of business and entrepreneurship. So
Right.
though I didn't have any film business, I had
Business is business.
I had the transferable skills from everything I'd ever done. So
Yeah.
that was a stroke of luck. But at the end of the day, I think that's an important thing. And then attached to that is getting out there, going to the events, joining New Filmmakers LA and showing up at those screenings. Whatever you can get your hands on, anywhere you can go, maybe you can volunteer just to be in the room, which I used to do all the time, and be around those people. That's what you got to do. You got to network, and that might be where you find what you're looking for.
If someone, wants to connect with you, wants to learn from you, how can they find you? Do they just email? Do they sign up? Is there an application process?
Well, yeah, email. My website is probably the good start because first of all, you get to see kind of what I'm up to, past and present and future. And that's just Samaco Films, SAMACO films.com. And then my email is just my name, Franco with a C, Franco at Samaco Films. So people are welcome to email me directly. I'm not very hard to find. And if people are interested, what I usually do is I do like a free 30-minute consultation so that we can do this and get to know each other. I can hear about their project. They can hear a little bit more about the program. And then they can decide if this is something that works for them or not.
Oh, gosh. Well, I'll be putting all those links in your email in the show notes, obviously. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. You're just, all your years and wisdom, you have so much to offer. And I am so grateful that I reached out to you. I've learned so much. And yes, of course, I'm still learning. We're still learning every day, but I'm just so grateful for the assets, for the documents that I do have. And yes, we'll rearrange because the script has changed and how have you. But it was just such a fantastic process. And, anyone listening, have a consultation if you're really serious about getting your project off the ground. I really do believe that you have to learn these things. Knowledge is power, right?
It is. But for me, just so they know, what I'm most interested in more than anything is commitment. You're right. I have been doing this a long time and I get a lot of wishy-washy.
Ugh.
I have no tolerance for it. I don't have any tolerance for entitlement. I do this thing. I hear that I do this thing on me, now. I'm not interested in me, now. If you want to play the long game, because
it's a long game.
It's a long game. If you want to play the long game and you want to do it right and you're serious and you're committed, don't call me if you're not, is basically what I'm saying. If you're not, then don't call me. And as far as my relationship with you is concerned, important to know, I'm in there for the long haul with you. So I get it. I've been, Anthony's movie has been 5 years. We're still doing it. You know what I mean? We're still working on it together. So I get that these things take forever. And just because a contract expires doesn't mean our relationship has. So,
of course not. Gosh.
Right.
Yeah, no.
So I'm in it for the long haul. At any point at any level, you need me to step in, just call me and I'll be there.
Oh, I will. I will.
I look forward to it. I hope so.
Gosh. Before we sign off, just for some sort of philosophical fun, and maybe you'll have a different sort of point of view after the sort of last couple of years you have, but do you, Franco Sama, do you feel that you were put on this earth at this particular time in history for a specific reason? Or do you feel that your being here is just random?
I absolutely do not believe it's random. And when I was 8 years old, I was watching you and your readers probably would never even know who it is, but Merv Griffin.
Of course, yes.
Merv Griffin.
He's a legend, yes.
I was watching his show, which was in black and white back then because we didn't have color televisions. And I was mesmerized, but I wasn't, and it was like a Johnny Carson show, like a guest show. And I wasn't really interested in the guests. I was interested in what I couldn't see, like what's going on. Like, and I actually remember at 8 years old having the thought, who arranged for that movie star person to be in that chair? Like, who's the in my mind, I didn't know what an agent was or a manager or anything.
Right.
But I knew that there had to be somebody that was responsible for that happening, and it wasn't that person. And I wanted to know what that looked like, right? And so I was eight years old when that happened. And so I knew, and I tell this story, that I knew it wasn't a hope or a dream or a prayer. It was a fact. I knew that I was going to be in this business. And I was not going to be famous. I wasn't going to be on a screen. I was going to be behind the scenes, and I was going to be important. I was going to make a difference. I knew that at 8 years old. And the irony of that whole story is that I was 39 years old before it kicked in. And I was in Buffalo, New York, of all places, right?
Oh, wow.
And I was on a job. I was a consultant in those days. And we got 22 inches of snow. And I couldn't leave to go into work. So I went into a coffee shop and I pulled out a yellow pad of paper and I wrote a letter to God. And I was like, what is going on here? What happened to the 8-year-old dream?
Oh my God.
And I'm sitting there and I'm literally in a blizzard, drinking coffee, writing this letter, frustrated out of my mind.
That's such a great scene. I see
Right?
it. What a great scene.
Well, it's even better because every time we go to Buffalo, we not only go to the coffee shop, it's called Spot Coffee.
It's still there.
I sit in the same seat, right? Every time. I never go to Buffalo without it, and I go there a lot. Anyway, just to finish the story, I'm 39 years old. I'm feeling like midlife crisis is coming on here. And I called I had a travel agent back then, right? We didn't have, Expedia.
The internet.
And I called my travel agent, Betty, and I said, Betty, book me a trip. I'd never been to California. I said, book me a trip. I'm going to Cali. And she did. And I came out here, and it was May. By the time I actually booked the trip, it was March. I'm sorry. It was March of that year, 1997. And I came out here for 2 weeks, figured out what I wanted to do. Someday I'll tell you the whole story. And August 5th, my birthday's October 10th. So I wanted to do it before I turned 40. August 5th, I arrived in LA. I got an unbelievable job as a publicist. My first client with my client was Francis Ford Coppola. My second one was Will Smith. My third one was Gary Oldman. I'm living the dream. I'm only here 2 months. And by October 10th, 1997, I had my own birthday party, my own 4th birthday, because nobody was going to do it for me. And I invited all this Hollywood people. It was such an unbelievable experience. And I did it. I made it to I was in the movie business or in the entertainment business by my 40th birthday. And this all happened in 1 year. Isn't that crazy?
Holy cow.
So to answer your question, that's how I know I was divinely inspired. Like there is no question. The way that all unfolded. And then just to top it all off, the following year, I get an invitation to the Jeopardy set for a private party for an invitation to honor Merv Griffin. And I got to go up to Merv and shake his hand and thank him, tell him that he is the reason why I'm here pursuing my dreams.
My God.
Isn't that crazy? So
it made me so emotional. That's so beautiful. Wow.
You. So I guess that answers your question.
Oh my God.
Right?
Thank
you
for
purpose. That. I have a purpose, and I'm fulfilling it every day, and I'm so grateful. And I have to be honest with you, Angela, it's because of people like you. It's because of people like you who hear me, who trust me, who believe in me, and who allow me into their world to be able to help, put these things together. It's just the best blessing I could ever ask for. I'm so grateful that at this point in my life, I get to do this. It's incredible.
And I am so grateful for you. And I'm so grateful for your time with us and with me here today. And with that, good people, we are out. Thank you so much for joining Franco and I. Oh, I'm so emotional. Until next time in the Artist Tribe. Thank you. Bye-bye.